Shortly after my wife and I got married, she became pregnant. Just a week later, she was rushed to the hospital due to severe bleeding. We lost the baby. The doctor, visibly upset, scolded me, assuming I hadn't been able to hold back, implying it was my fault. I was stunned. I hadn't been intimate with my wife since learning about the pregnancy. I was at work when I received the hospital call, notifying me she'd been admitted. Shocked, I rushed there, forgetting to even inform my boss. When I arrived, the doctor looked at me sternly and said, "The first trimester is always risky, and you didn't hold back during this period? Do you realize the impact?" He continued, "She's been through several similar procedures before. Her body is used to this now, and it might be challenging for her to have a successful pregnancy going forward." My mind was racing. Still in denial, I asked, "Doctor, are you certain? This was our first baby. She wouldn't have done anything like this, much less repeatedly." I couldn't finish the sentence. I knew the story, even though I didn't want to accept it. I had fallen in love with my wife the moment I saw her. I had the means to support her and was ready to commit. We married with our family's blessings. On our first night together, I believed it was something special. When I saw the mark on the sheets, my heart soared, believing I was with someone who had never shared herself with anyone else. Soon after, she became pregnant. The night before the incident, she had told me she would be home late because she needed to accompany a friend to the doctor. Her friend wasn't feeling well, and my wife always went with her. I didn't think much of it, but now looking back, I realized she might have been unfaithful for some time. I snapped out of my thoughts when I heard her phone vibrate. Until that moment, I had never gone through her phone. Driven by curiosity, and while she was still under the effects of a sedative, I picked it up and used her finger to unlock it. When I opened the messaging app, I stumbled upon a conversation I wished I hadn't seen. My mind went blank. "When are you coming? I miss you. You're in the mood again, huh? Wait for me in the room." The messages kept going, each one more explicit than the last. There were even photos, revealing an intimacy that she clearly shared with someone else. Right there in the hospital bed, I could barely look at her. I felt a mixture of anger and disgust. My initial urge was to confront her on the spot, but my rational side held me back. I couldn't alert her just yet. I needed concrete proof of her betrayal before any confrontation. Without evidence, she could deny everything and take half of what we had in a divorce. I took screenshots of the conversation and put her phone back. At that moment, my in-laws burst into the room. My mother-in-law, visibly distressed, grabbed my collar and began blaming me. "Give me back my daughter. She was pregnant. Why couldn't you control yourself?" My father-in-law, calmer, took me out into the hallway and tried to negotiate. "George, I know you're young and full of energy, but Queenie is my daughter. You owe us for what happened. How about buying a car for Jack? Something around $500,000. We'll let this slide if you do." Jack, her brother, had always been dependent, never holding a job, living off his parents. I gave a humorless laugh. Since the wedding, her family had always found excuses to drain money from me. They asked for everything: latest electronics, designer shoes, expensive gifts. They even expected me to pay for Jack's dates. I looked at my father-in-law, expressionless, and said, "I don't have that kind of money." Before he could respond, my mother-in-law shouted, "Are you just going to use my daughter and discard her? You have no shame. You're an animal. Couldn't hold yourself back. Even for her sake? You ruined her chance of being a mother." She dropped to the ground, crying dramatically, blaming me for everything. People in the hallway started to stare, visibly uncomfortable. Then Jack stepped out of the room and said, "Mom, stop it. Queenie is awake." We entered the room to see Queenie, pale but awake. She looked fragile. As soon as she saw me, she began to cry and said, "I'm sorry, honey. I just found out that our baby—" I interrupted her firmly. "Tell me the truth. What really happened?" Right in front of her parents, she began her story. "It's all my fault. I didn't know acupuncture wasn't safe during pregnancy. I've been feeling weak lately, so I booked a session with a friend. But it was actually for bruises, and when I got home, I felt worse. Then we lost the baby." I looked at her with disappointment. At first, I was furious. It was hard to process the betrayal. But then, the disappointment set in, and eventually, all hope faded. All these years, the time, the emotional and financial investment all felt wasted. Still, I decided I'd get my revenge in due time. Before the divorce, I kept my calm. Queenie's mother hugged her, crying about how careless she had been, while her father tried to console me, saying, "This was just a misunderstanding, George. Don't take it to heart. You're still young. You can have other children in the future." I believed that keeping the peace for now would be the best course of action. Thinking everything had blown over, Queenie started her recovery with no worries. In a few days, she was discharged. The day she was supposed to be picked up, she refused my offer and came home late. I was in a bad mood and had a few drinks that night. By the time she arrived, I was already asleep. She seemed exhausted, took a shower, and fell asleep almost immediately. When I was sure she was deeply asleep, I opened my eyes, quietly got out of bed, picked up her phone from the bedside table, and went to the study. Using my computer, I synced her chat history to a cloud account. Although I had prepared myself for this, seeing those messages with someone else still hit me like a knife. My heart went cold. I returned to my office, heart heavy with the sting of betrayal. As I synced her messages to my computer, each line of that conversation hit me like a blow. It was one thing to suspect, but to see the messages, the explicit words and details, was a level of pain I hadn't anticipated. Every word seemed to cut deeper, and a wave of anger, frustration, and disappointment washed over me. But I knew I couldn't act on impulse. If I wanted any justice, I'd have to handle this carefully. The days that followed were a strange, painful blur. She went about her routine, smiling in the mornings, pretending to care for me, asking how I was doing as if nothing had happened. Her casual words and gestures disgusted me. Each word, every fake smile, felt like another layer of deceit. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew that any rash move would only hurt my case. I needed proof and a solid plan. In secret, I consulted a lawyer. I laid everything out for him, showing him the screenshots, explaining the procedures she had apparently undergone even before we were together. He guided me on what I'd need to ensure the divorce went in my favor and that I didn't end up financially ruined. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to lose everything I'd worked for. She wouldn't get away with this. I began gathering more evidence. I noted each night she claimed to be out with friends, each suspicious text and phone call, every unconvincing excuse. I documented everything, building a dossier on the double life she was leading. Every lie, every flimsy explanation was recorded in detail. Then something unexpected happened. One evening, she came home even later than usual, looking tense, as though she was hiding something. Casually, I asked about her day, watching her closely. She avoided eye contact and mumbled something about helping a friend. I knew it was a lie, but I pretended to accept it. Her anxiety was evident, like she was afraid I was catching on. That night, once she was asleep, I unlocked her phone and found yet another set of messages. This time, they were discussing how to keep their relationship hidden. "Is he catching on?" her lover asked. "No, he's way too naive to figure it out. I don't think he'll find out anytime soon," she replied, followed by laughing emojis. My blood boiled. Naive? Little did she know I was collecting every piece of evidence. Days passed and I kept silent. She continued her charade, but I was prepared. Every smile she offered felt like mockery. My anger simmered below the surface, but I knew that confronting her too soon would ruin everything I had built. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the damage she had caused when it all finally came crashing down. Then, one day she slipped up. She arrived home looking uneasy, and when I asked casually about her day, she hesitated. That night, after she'd fallen asleep, I found a new set of messages in her phone. They were explicit, filled with details I'd never wanted to know. My heart clenched as I saved the screenshots, knowing these would be the final pieces of evidence I needed. A few friends, aware of my situation and the plan, had started dropping hints around her. They would make small talk about loyalty and the importance of honesty in relationships, subtly reminding her of the values she was trampling. One of my friends even joked about how secrets never stay hidden. She began to look uneasy, as though suspecting something, yet convinced she was safe. It was almost humorous watching her scramble to pretend nothing was wrong. She would occasionally question me about whether I'd said anything to friends about our relationship, but I'd just smile and say, "No, why do you ask?" Feeling guilty. The color would drain from her face, but she'd brush it off with a laugh. Yet I could see the cracks forming. Her confidence was faltering, and she was starting to wonder if she'd miscalculated. I continued to wait. I wanted her to feel every ounce of the weight she had placed on me, to understand that her lies would eventually destroy her own stability. I wasn't going to confront her in a heated moment. I wanted to do it at a time and place where she'd have no room to escape, where she'd have to face every lie, every betrayal. She would know exactly who she had underestimated. She thought I was naive, thought she had me fooled. But when the moment came, when everything fell apart, she'd understand just how thoroughly I had planned this. And I'd leave her with nothing but the ruins of her own making. The days dragged on, each one a painful reminder of the betrayal I was living with. I kept up the facade, going through the motions, pretending we were the picture-perfect couple. She continued her charade, playing the caring, loving wife, acting as if nothing was wrong. But each fake smile, every hollow gesture only fueled my resolve. I was no longer just angry. I was determined to make her understand what she had thrown away, to make her feel the depth of every lie she told, every deception she wove. Over time, I carefully prepared every detail of my plan. I started making discreet financial moves, shifting funds from our joint accounts into one solely in my name. Slowly, I worked to ensure that the house was under my ownership, not ours. All the assets we'd built together were being quietly redirected. She had no idea, still completely convinced I was oblivious. But soon, she would realize just how thoroughly she had misjudged me. The day finally came. She announced another night out with friends. I smiled and kissed her goodbye at the door, wishing her a pleasant evening. But this time I followed her. At a safe distance, I watched as she met her lover at a restaurant, laughing and smiling in a way she hadn't done with me in months. In that moment, everything clicked, the realization of just how disposable I was in her eyes. I had been used, discarded, deceived. While she enjoyed her evening, I went back home to finalize the last pieces of my plan. I set everything in place, leaving nothing to chance. When she returned home, well past midnight, I was sitting in the living room, pretending to read. She gave me her usual fake smile, trying to act normal. Little did she know, this was the last time she'd try to play me for a fool. "How was your night out with friends?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, making her feel comfortable enough to lie again. She mumbled something vague, clearly not expecting any suspicion. That was when I placed her phone on the table, open to her latest chat with her lover. She froze, her face going pale as she took in what was in front of her. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "Do you have anything to say?" I asked, my voice cold. She stammered, trying to find words, but nothing came out. I watched as her mask crumbled, every fake smile, every line now painfully evident. I let her stammer and stumble, recounting each time she'd gone out with friends, each excuse she'd made. Every single betrayal I had recorded, every detail was laid bare. I didn't shout, I didn't rage. I simply listed every lie, every deceitful act. Her expression shifted from fear to desperation, realizing there was no way out of this. "You've destroyed everything," I said, almost to myself. "Every ounce of trust, every memory we built. You threw it all away. And now, you'll see what it's like to lose." I asked her to leave that night. No explanations, no pleas, just a cold dismissal. I could see her shock, perhaps realizing that her carefully built world was about to collapse. With nothing left to say, she gathered a few belongings and left, glancing back one last time, as if hoping I'd change my mind. But that was never going to happen. Her life here was over. The next day, I called my lawyer and finalized the divorce proceedings. Within a matter of weeks, the house, the finances, everything was legally mine. Every piece of evidence I had gathered, every careful move I'd made, had ensured that she would walk away with nothing. And to seal her fate, I secured a clause that prevented her from receiving any form of financial compensation. A few days later, she called desperate. She had nowhere to go, no money, and was now forced to confront the reality she had created. She begged to talk, pleaded for forgiveness, asked me to remember the good times. But all those memories were tainted, and I made it clear that there was no going back. There's nothing to reconsider. You made your choice, I said, my voice steady and final. She continued to plead, as if only now realizing the full weight of her actions. She wanted forgiveness, a second chance, but I knew that was a luxury she would never have. This was her beginning on a long road of regret. In time, she ended up staying with relatives, stripped of her independence, without the financial support she had once enjoyed. Meanwhile, I finally felt the weight lifting. I focused on my career, traveled, surrounded myself with people who valued and respected me. With each passing day, I felt stronger, rebuilding a life she had no part in. Eventually, I heard through mutual friends that her lover had left her too. For him, she had never been more than a convenient escape, and without the stability I had provided, he had no interest in staying. She was left, alone, with nothing but the echoes of her mistakes. And so, I moved forward, leaving her and the betrayal behind. In my mind, I knew this was the true ending, though part of me felt that her punishment was only just beginning. The absence of the life we had built, the isolation, and the silence, these would be her greatest torment.